So, late last night we harvested, I would say actually late yesterday evening, we harvested quite a bit. My husband helped me. And look at this. It looks like the little caterpillar on the chives. The amount of caterpillars I found is insane, guys. This is one of the reasons I always tell people to wash your food when you bring it in the house. We don't spray, and I know sometimes people have questions about why us not spraying, and wouldn't it be easier if we did. Not for me. I'd rather pick a couple of caterpillars out of my lettuce and greens than have God only knows what all over my food. That's just me. Plus, I don't want to handle the chemicals. I don't want to deal with it. I see just with the city spraying for mosquitoes that it actually heavily affects our pollinator population, which is really unfortunate. So, I currently have not sprayed anything at all on anything. Not fungicide, nothing. I'm not against spraying fungicide when necessary or using things like BT. I just haven't done it because it hasn't been a necessity for us. But here we are. Here's the chives, and I've already given some of these away. So this is just a huge amount. This is only 2 plants. These are our perennial plants. They're 2 years old. So this is pretty incredible seeing how much they're producing. And they grow almost all year round. But we've harvested them several times already this year. So it may be time to divide the clumps. The crazy thing is that before our chives started really producing this year, I went to Johnny's and bought a pack of over 23,000 chive seeds. And now I'm like, with that amount of chives, we probably never have to grow bulbing onions again. We still will, but it won't be a necessity. And I could probably put a lot of this away. But I love sharing so much. I sent a bunch of food with my husband to work for his coworker, and so I really enjoy that part, being able to do that, and it's really cool. And then here are some chamomile that I didn't even plant these. These reseeded from last year, and I went ahead and picked them even though there's not a lot, because once they start to dry on the plant, they just completely fall apart. It makes it a lot more challenging for me to pick them. So I'll go ahead and dehydrate these a little bit and then put them in a jar to use for chamomile tea. Also, there's a really cool marshmallow recipe where you use chamomile tea to make the marshmallows. I want to try that so bad. And then look at these. These are all bulbing onions, but they were really skinny growing under the squash. The other bulbing onions are getting massive that are grown in different areas, but I thought I'd try to intercrop some onions with squash. It was a bad idea. So the squash, they got so big so fast, they just kind of shaded out everything. And then I also picked all the watermelon radishes, and we just threw them to the geese because they were getting eaten up by the insects underneath the squash, and I think those need a pretty significant amount of sun too. So I think that I'm just going to stick to growing radishes in fall from here on out. But I definitely want to try and start the bulbing onions from seed, or this fall get them in the ground and let them kind of rest all winter. We'll see what happens. I definitely want to grow more onions, but I'm really leaning on the side of chives because they're so much easier to use in so many recipes. And even after picking last night, we picked 7 squash, okay, and then here are 2 more, and you may not be able to tell, but these are actually pretty big. I'm so impressed that we picked all those squash, and then we had so many that we just sent them away, and then there's these 2. So I'm like, okay, I'm so happy with my squash production. I was so worried we wouldn't get any before disease set in and squash bugs, even having to remove those 5 up front. We are still getting a tremendous amount, and the Zephyr squash and the saffron hybrid squash are producing really well now. So we are just going to keep bringing in squash, and I'm going to go ahead and start seeds probably for some more Cozell squash, and the other plants. That way when these finish, I'll have something to pop in its place. We'll just keep the squash rotation going. And then here's the sink full of lettuce that I harvested yesterday. There's still lettuce in the garden, still several heads of lettuce. I washed a bunch last night, sent a gallon bag stuffed full with my husband, and then I filled up our container in the fridge of squash too. So I don't know why I said squash, of lettuce too. And yes, there are dishes all around my sink because the other side I need to wash dishes, and this side I've already washed dishes and I need to put them away. But I was up until 2 something in the morning just preparing lettuce. So behind the scenes of Homestead that you don't see, it's just the amount of work that we do all day and night. It doesn't stop, guys. I'm going to be really honest. I'm starting to see why people who have massive gardens start working from home, because it really does feel like a full-time job trying to harvest all of this lettuce and everything else, and then wash it, bag it, everything else. I mean, it's intense how much work it is. And look, there's another caterpillar here. Came to the top. Now all these I just throw back outside. I was coming out here to show you guys because we've had so much rain last night, and the storms were so intense. The thunder was shaking our house, and I thought, well, I should probably get up and record this. It would be really cool. For one, I love recording rain sounds for myself, but it would also be cool to show just the intensity of the storms last night. I did not want to get out of bed, to be honest. I was just laying there, kind of watching TV on and off, trying to sleep, but it wasn't working because it was so loud. So I just didn't feel like it, to be honest. But look how big these banana plants are getting. This is our 3rd year now growing them. Last year was the 2nd year, and they were supposed to produce fruit, and then we got a freeze out of nowhere. We weren't even supposed to get a freeze, and it killed all of the plants, and we were kind of disappointed because they had, were so close to fruiting, and we were planning on building a frame around them to protect them from cold weather before it got cold, and literally just the weekend we were supposed to do it, a freeze came out of nowhere, and it wasn't even forecasted, and knocked everything out. So we're going to try again. I've been looking at areas in the yard to move these so that I can build a cold frame and let them grow, but they're growing really close together now, and so they grow well in a grove, but this is actually quite close, so I'm going to try and separate them out a little bit, and then wherever I separate them out to, they'll still fill in and grow as a grove. That's just how bananas tend to grow. Look at this one. So I'm not sure why it has the damage on the leaves, honestly, but it'll be okay. This area right here, these are growing from the roots of the mother plant that was the tallest. So it's interesting to see just how many plants grew. We only started with 3 banana plants, so we've actually dug up some of these and given them away over the past couple of years and everything else. So it's always crazy to see just how many are left after doing all of that. So the other day I showed where the water was just a little high, but not anything like this, and said that one day of rain would fill everything back up again, and of course I was right. This is why we want to use this whole back area for our ducks and geese. And if and when we do sell our house, hopefully this will be more like a meadow area. We had no idea that it held this kind of water when we bought. We were in a 5-year drought. The person who owned this previously probably knew because they had been on the property for over 20 years. And we had no inclination, half the stuff going on with the yard. So the first rainstorm that hit after we bought our house was Hurricane Harvey. We learned real fast how much water this yard could hold. And thankfully none of it got into our house, but this house definitely has a lot of storm damage from over the years that wasn't taken care of. And we're currently trying to remodel and take care of all of that. It's just hard when you have everything else going on and a family. So that'll happen over time, and I've kind of shown bits and pieces of it. So look at this. This is the pond, the little one. And this is how much water's in this area just since the last time I filmed. And this is only one day of rain. So you can see it went from a muddy mess to a pond again. And over time, it's carved out. You can see where the geese are standing. It's kind of carved out this area like a peninsula, and then the water. So we just let it. You know, for a while we talked about filling it in and everything else, but now we have a lot of waterfowl. It actually turned out to be kind of a blessing. And what we're talking about, before we talked about moving our house to the front of our property, but quite frankly, we cannot afford to do that. The city has grandfathered us in to be pier and beam. If we move our house to the front of our property, we will be required to build a full slab, and the slab thickness is pretty intense to meet the city requirements. So it would cost a lot of money to build the slab, then move the house forward. I mean, with everything, we priced it out, we're looking at like $120,000 to have everything moved. And that's insane. We got our house as a foreclosure and we only paid about $150,000 for it. So the idea of paying almost as much as the house to do that just blows our mind. So what we talked about is, if we decide to build a house or buy a new house and put it up front like a modular home, that's the only way our house is getting moved up front anytime soon. And what we decided instead was to just re-level our house and finish replacing the damaged wood on the outside, and then kind of build a porch that goes into the water. So it'll kind of be like a pier on a lake, basically. And so we'll fence in the whole backyard, and the ducks and geese will be allowed to have access to the entire backyard at all times, except for when it's dry enough for a dog to come in the backyard. He'll have a small section fenced out where he can come and play, but most of the year it's pretty wet back here. And if I turn around, like, you can get a better picture of just how much water is everywhere, you know. And then this area closer to my house has kind of like, it slopes. It goes really high where my house is down to really low where the water is. And so we're planning on building kind of out into this. It would be really cool to have a meadow area. I'm going to get some meadow seeds, a significant amount, and seed it out, and then build that porch out here into this water area, so like all over here. And it'll be a massive porch, but also it'll be cool to watch the animals kind of walk underneath it and everything else. Now the house itself will be closed off, so the animals won't be able to go under the house. And the goal is that if we let the animals out late enough in the day into this area, because they'll still have their coop, they will lay their eggs in the coop and then come out here. But that's not 100% foolproof. I'm sure we'll have some nesting ducks and geese to get under the porch, and honestly, I'm fine with that. As long as the eggs don't rot, I'm fine with that. Let me clarify. The only thing saving this pump is that it's so high up compared to where the water is. We used a bunch of algicide in this pond. It did not work, you know. We used livestock safe algicide, even more than is recommended, and it's just not helping. So if you have any ideas that are safe for livestock on algicide, let me know. Because what we used definitely did not work in the way that we expected at all. And so we know we have to get in a better filter. And we're gonna go get another filter for it this week. But it's hard. It's kicking our butts trying to keep this water clear. I can't wait to get that whole meadow finished and see these guys actually get to run around and play out there. I think it'll be so cool to watch. Now, we will not allow these guys to have access to our porch or get on it. So none of them fly. They are not true flyers, that's for sure. They may hop and flap their wings, but that's about it. And so I do not have to worry about them flying up on the porch, but I'll definitely keep them from being up there. I do not want them on that porch area at all. It's just gross. And as far as the chickens, I think permanently they're going to be in a mobile coop, so they will not be able to just do what they want, because in our past experience with chickens, they fly out of their pen. I don't really like clipping their wings. Even with their wings clipped, I've seen them like flap their wings and use their feet to climb the fence sideways. They are very smart creatures, very, very little tricksters, I guess. I don't even know what to say about them, but I don't want them to get out, break into our garden, get on our porch, everything else. So for me, the chickens will always be confined. They will have access to grass and even the walkways of our garden, so they'll be able to free range. They'll be able, you know, to have things to entertain them, but what they won't be able to do is just destroy things, especially the garden. I've learned my lesson when it comes to chickens, let me tell you. Also, we have a lot of predators here, chicken hawks, owls, things of that nature, so we definitely don't want our chickens to fall prey to that. Now, I'm surprised that some of our smaller ducks haven't. We used to have a hawk that would hang out back here, but when we got the adult geese in December, they kind of backed off real quick. Geese can be loud when predators approach, but they can also be mean. They've chased off neighborhood cats and everything else that thought they were going to come back here and get a free meal. And the surprise on those animals' faces. I know our basset hound thought he would come to the fence and bother the geese, and he changed his mind real quick. For the geese to want to take off after a 45-pound basset hound, it's pretty crazy. They're pretty, I don't know. They have some nerve, let me tell you. You can tell they're having the time of their life. I mean, they are loving this area. This is the #1 reason I decided to start getting ducks, was the amount of water that this held. Because when I first moved here, we had chickens, and it was a big surprise when that hurricane hit and we realized that the whole area for our chickens was flooded. So I'm glad that we went with waterfowl. It's been one of the best decisions, and I get to share it with you guys, which is so cool. So that's always great for us. I know this video is kind of sporadic today. I'm exhausted. I didn't sleep well last night. I still have a bunch of schoolwork to do before finals. School ends Friday at midnight, so trying to get everything done before then. It's going to be pretty intense. But I'm going to sacrifice some of the stuff I've been doing at the house, like cleaning up and things for the next day or two, which is going to be a little rough. I'll get the kids to help me, of course. And then when I can't possibly do any more work on my final papers and things of that nature, then I'll take a break and pack up the lettuce, things like that. Give my mind a break and get right back to it. I know this video is a little sporadic, but I wanted to show you everything that we harvested. And that's not everything, because we sent quite a bit off this morning, but a good portion of what we harvested. And then I wanted to show you the sheer amount of water that is in this area from one night of rain. Now, it was intense rain. At times they were saying we were receiving between 4 and 5 inches in an hour, and then over time it dropped to 1 to 2 inches, and then finally a ½ inch. That is a lot of rain for several hours of rain, and it shows in this area. What are you guys doing way over there now? I don't know what they're doing. One last thing before I go, I want to say, where all of these IBC containers, we didn't have money for fencing at the time, but we got all these given to us. Now the goal is to actually fence off these areas and use these for other things, maybe even grow beds. So I'm excited to kind of show that off and show you how this is going to change. But I'm going to go ahead and head out of here. There were just a couple of things I wanted to talk to you about and show you now that we have really started harvesting and gotten some ideas on how we're going to do things around the yard, especially seeing where all the water is and how we can kind of meld everything together. I think it would be really cool to have a meadow in the backyard and get to expand more in the front as far as a garden and workshop and all of that goes. So thank you guys for joining us. I'm so excited for you to join us on this journey and see just what we're doing and just how things are going to change on this little tiny homestead.